The minute-by-minute unfolding of 9/11. September 11th, 8 a.m. Two planes take off from Boston. Flight 11 with 5 terrorists, 76 passengers and 11 crew on board, and United Airlines Flight 175 with 51 passengers, 9 crew and 5 terrorists on board. At 8:14 a.m., the 5 terrorists from Flight 11 got up and headed for the cockpit. 2 stewardesses and a man, Daniel Lewin, were stabbed to death. Mohammed Atta, presented as the coordinator of the hijackings, takes control of the plane. At 8:20 a.m., the flight attendant Betty Ann Ong informs American Airlines of what is happening, and the first alert is given. The plane has been hijacked. At 8:24 a.m., Mohammed Atta tries to make an announcement to the passengers, but hits the wrong button and sends the message to Boston.
American 11, are you trying to call?
Nobody move. Everything will be okay.
At the same time, Flight 77 takes off from Washington with 5 terrorists on board. 20 minutes later, a fourth flight, 93 from Newark, was in the air with 4 terrorists. At 8:46 a.m., America is on the brink of chaos. Flight 11, the first to take off, slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 490 miles per hour. All passengers were killed instantly as the plane opened a gigantic breach in the upper floors of the tower, which immediately burst into flames. At 8:49 a.m., American TV channels went live. CBS and CNN interrupted their programs and launched special broadcasts. No one yet knew what was happening, but the images were staggering. At 8:50 a.m., US President George Bush was notified, and the hypothesis of an accident was initially put forward. Then, at 9 a.m., the 2 towers were evacuated, but it was already too late. At 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 struck the second tower of the World Trade Center. George Bush was reading a book to an elementary school class when his chief of staff whispered in his ear that America was under attack. The president leaves the classroom in a hurry, already talking about a potential terrorist attack. 10 minutes later, at 9:17 a.m., the passengers of Flight 77 bound for the Pentagon call their loved ones to inform them that the aircraft has been taken hostage by terrorists armed with knives and box cutters. The United States are on high alert. 250 FBI agents begin to investigate and make the connection to Al-Qaeda. 2 F-15 fighter jets arrive over New York and begin patrolling the area. Several city buildings are closed, including the Empire State Building, Rockefeller Center, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Same goes for the city's bridges and tunnels. New Yorkers were terrified and began to flee the city, mostly on foot. At 9:28 a.m., Flight 93 is hijacked. The terrorists killed a passenger and a stewardess, took possession of the cockpit and forced the other passengers to gather in the back. The terrorist who had just taken control of the plane changed direction and headed for Washington. At the same time, at 9:30 a.m., George Bush appeared on TV to deliver his first address to the American people.
2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
At 9:35 a.m., air traffic controllers noticed that Flight 77 has changed direction and is getting dangerously close to the Pentagon. Vice President Dick Cheney was taken to a secure bunker, and 2 minutes later, at 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon at 530 miles per hour. All 65 passengers were killed instantly, while 125 people lost their lives on the ground. At the same time, the National Air Traffic Control Agency ordered all aircraft in flight to land as soon as possible, while the White House and Capitol were evacuated. Of the 4 hijacked aircrafts, only one was still in the air, Flight 93. At 9:58 a.m., passengers were able to contact their loved ones. A total of 35 calls were made from the plane. Passengers are informed that the World Trade Center has been attacked, that the terrorists have no intention of landing, and that they are sure to hit a building. They are advised to do everything in their power to regain control of the plane, and the passengers gathered in the back draw up a strategy to retake the cockpit. At the same time, horrible images were being broadcast. Victims trapped in the World Trade Center tried to escape the flames and throw themselves into the void. At 9:59 a.m., after burning for almost an hour, the South Tower collapsed suddenly. There was panic in the streets as a huge cloud of smoke engulfed the city. Minutes later, the last hijacked flight, Flight 93, crashes at Shanksville in a wooded area of western Pennsylvania. It seems that the pilot deliberately chose to crash here to prevent the passengers from regaining control of the plane. The plane was pulverized and no one survived. Authorities are uncertain whether the terrorists were aiming for the White House or the Capitol. At 10:28 a.m., exactly 1 hour and 42 minutes after being hit, the North Tower of the World Trade Center also collapses. More than 1,600 people, employees trapped in the tower, and firefighters were killed, at which point the attacks and their direct consequences were formally over. In less than 2 hours, 4 planes crashed, destroying the World Trade Center and damaging the Pentagon. At 6:54 p.m., George W. Bush returned to the White House. While no one yet knew who was behind the tragedy, a senior U.S. official confirmed that Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda group was suspected of involvement in the attacks. At 8:30 p.m., President Bush addresses the nation.
None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world.
At 11, the death toll from the attacks is announced. A total of 2,977 people lost their lives. 2,753 in New York, 184 at the Pentagon, and 40 in Pennsylvania. 310 of them were of foreign nationality, including 67 Britons, 41 Indians, 28 South Koreans, 24 Canadians, 24 Japanese, 4 French, and 1 Belgian. The youngest victim was 2 years old and the oldest 85. More than 6,000 people were also injured, according to the official toll, but various sources put the number at over 20,000. September 11, 2001 marked a turning point in our world. It was the deadliest terrorist attack in modern history.